Morning. Welcome to Open the Book for our story called Across the River. Last week we heard how Joshua and Caleb led the Hebrews across the River Jordan and into the Promised Land. But what we didn't tell you was how they got across the river. And that's what this story is all about. But before we hear it, let's do our wrap. Let's open the book. Let's take a look. Let's listen and see how good God can be. Oh, let's take a look. Let's open the book. Let's open the book. Let's take a look. Let's listen and see how good God can be. Oh, let's take a look. Let's open the book. So I open the book at the story Across the River. Watching and waiting, watching and waiting. God's people waited on the bank of the River Jordan. At long last, they were nearly there. At long last, they were nearly home. For hundreds of years, they had been slaves in Egypt. God had set them free. But because they had not trusted him, they had spent the last 40 years wandering through the wilderness. Now their journey was nearly at an end, for there it was, the land they had been promised, waiting for them on the other side of the river. God's people watched the waters of the river spilling over the banks. The winter snows had melted and the river was deep. They wondered how they would get across. So they waited for instructions from their leader, Joshua. Watching and waiting, watching and waiting. All of a sudden, one of Joshua's officers arrived, breathless, in a terrible hurry. "At last I have some instructions," he said. "Listen, you are to wait here until you see the priests who carry the precious box full of our holy things begin to move. Watch where they go and follow them. But because the box is holy, stay at a distance from it for now. The priests will show you where to go, because you have never been this way before. And one more thing," he added. "Joshua says you are to get ready, make yourselves holy too, because tomorrow God is going to do something amazing." The very next morning, the people on the riverbank were ready for whatever would happen. They had got up early to spend time in prayer and had washed themselves very clean and put on their best clothes so they too would be special, like the special box. Watching and waiting, watching and waiting. Then they saw the priests lift up the special box full of holy things and carry it down to the River Jordan. Just as they had been told, they followed them at a distance, waiting and wondering what on earth was going to happen. The water was still flowing over the riverbanks, cold and strong, and very, very deep. But as soon as the priest's feet touched the water's edge, the river split in two before them. leaving a dry path straight down the middle. The people watched and were amazed. Carrying the precious box, the priests walked out on dry land right in the middle of the river. The people didn't need to watch and wait anymore. They quickly ran down to the edge of the river and stepped onto the dry land. And there the priests stood, watching and waiting, until all God's people had crossed over. When the last one had reached the other side, they joined the people in their new land, and the path through the river closed up behind them. After all the watching, after all the waiting, God had done something amazing. And now the people were home. Joshua had been given some very clear instructions from God. The people had finally learned to trust God, that they would take care of them, so they did exactly what Joshua told them. No one disobeyed, and everyone got safely to the other side. So close your eyes just for a moment and think about the times when it is really, really important to do exactly what you are told, like when the fire bell rings or when you need to safely cross a road. Now I'm going to say a prayer, and if you wish to make it your prayer, say Amen at the end after me. Dear God, thank you for all the people who keep us safe every day. Help us to be sensible and listen to advice on keeping safe. Thank you that you want us to be safe because you love us. Amen. Well, thank you very much for listening, and I'll see you soon. Bye-bye.